All right, let's read another episode of The Rambler by Dr. Samuel Johnson. This is Rambler number 38 for Saturday, July 28th, 1750. The title of which is The Advantages of Mediocrity, an Eastern Fable. All right, there's a little Latin here, which I'll skip, and then a quote. The man within the golden mean, who can be his boldest wish contain, securely views the ruined cell, where sordid want and sorrow dwell, and in himself serenely great, declines an envied room of state. Francis. Among many parables which men of imagination have drawn between the natural and moral state of the world, it has been observed that happiness as well as virtue consists in mediocrity, that to avoid every extreme is necessary, even to him who has no other care than to pass through the present state with ease and safety, and that the middle path is the road of security, on either side of which are not only the pitfalls of vice, but the precepts of ruin. Thus the maxim of Cleobulus and Lindium, mediocrity is best, has been long considered as a universal principle, extended through the whole compass of life and nature. The experience of every age seems to have given it new confirmation, and to show that nothing, however specious or alluring, is pursued with propriety or enjoyed with safety beyond certain limits. Even the gifts of nature, which may truly be considered as the most solid and durable of all terrestrial advantages, are found, when they exceed the middle point, to draw the possessor into many calamities, easily avoided by others that have been less bountifully enriched or adorned. We see every day women perish with infamy, by having been too willing to set their beauty to show, and others, though not with equal guilt or misery, yet with very sharp remorse, languishing in decay, neglect, and obscurity, for having rated their youthful charms at too high a price. And indeed, if the opinion of Bacon be thought to deserve much regard, very few sighs would be vented for eminent or superlative elegance of form. For beautiful women, says he, are seldom of any great accomplishments, because they, for the most part, studied behavior rather than virtue. Health and vigor and a happy constitution of the corporal frame are of absolute necessity to the enjoyment of the comforts and to the performance of the duties of life, and requisite in yet a greater measure to the accomplishment of anything illustrious or distinguished. Yet even these, if we can judge by their apparent consequences, are sometimes not very beneficial to those on whom they are most liberally bestowed. They are frequently the chambers of the sick. They that frequent the chambers of the sick will generally find the sharpest pains and most stubborn maladies among those whom confidence of the form of nature formerly betrayed to negligence and irregularity, and that superfluity of strength, which was at once their boast and their snare, has often in the latter part of life no other effect than it continues them long in impotence and anguish. Jeez. Powerful stuff. These gifts of nature are, however, always blessings in themselves, and to be acknowledged with gratitude to him that gives them, since they are, in their regular and legitimate effects, productive of happiness, and prove pernicious only by voluntary corruption or idle negligence. And as there is too little danger of pursuing them with too much ardor or anxiety, because no skill or diligence can hope to procure them, the uncertainty of their influence upon our lives is mentioned, not to deprecate their real value, but to repress the discontent and envy to which the want of them often gives occasion in those who do not enough suspect their own frailty, nor consider how much less in the calamity of not possessing great powers than of not using them aright. Of all those things that make us superior to others, there is none so much within the reach of our endeavors as riches, nor anything more eagerly or constantly desired. Poverty is an evil always in our view, an evil complicated with so many circumstances of uneasiness and vexation that every man is studious to avoid it. Some degrees of riches is therefore required, that we may be exempt from the gripe of necessity. When this purpose is once attained, we naturally wish for more, that the evil which is regarded with so much horror may be yet at a greater distance from us, as he that has once felt or dreaded the paw of a savage will not be at rest till they are parted by some barrier, which may take away all possibility of a second attack. To this point, if fear be not unreasonably indulged, Cleobus would perhaps not refuse to extend his mediocrity, but it almost always happens that the man who grows rich changes his notions of poverty, states his wants by some new measure, and from flying the enemy that pursued him, bends his endeavors to overtake those whom he sees before him. The power of gratifying his appetites increases their demands. 1,000 wishes crowd in upon him, importunate to be satisfied, and vanity and ambition often open prospects to desire, which still grow wider as they are more contemplated. Thus, in time, want is enlarged without bounds. An eagerness for increase of possessions deluges the soul, and we sink into the gulfs of insatiability, only because we do not sufficiently consider that all real need is very soon supplied, and all real danger of its invasion easily precludes. That the claims of vanity, being without limits, must be denied at last, and that the pain of repressing them is less pungent before they have been long accustomed to compliance. Whoever shall look heedfully upon those who are eminent for their riches will not think their condition such as that he should hazard his quiet as much and much less his virtue to obtain it. For all that great wealth generally gives above a moderate fortune is more room for the freaks of caprice, and more privilege for ignorance and vice, a quicker succession of flatteries, and a larger circle of voluptuousness. There is one reason seldom remarked, which makes riches less desirable. Too much wealth is very frequently the occasion of poverty. He whom the wantonness of abundance has once softened easily sinks into neglect of his affairs, and he that thinks he can afford to be negligent is not far from being poor. He will soon be involved in perplexities which his inexperience will render insurmountable. He will fly for help to those whose interest it will be that he should be more distressed, and will be at last torn to pieces by the vultures that always hover over fortunes in decay. What an image. When the plains of India were burnt up by the long continuance of drought, Hemet and Rothschild, two neighboring shepherds, faint with thirst, stood at the common boundary of their grounds, with their flocks and herds panting round them, and in extremity of distress prayed for water. On a sudden the air was becalmed, the birds ceased to chirp, and the flocks to bleat. They turned their eyes every way, and saw a being of mighty stature advancing through the valley, whom they knew upon his near approach to be the genius of distribution. In one hand he held the sheaves of plenty, and in the other the saber of destruction. The shepherds stood trembling, and would have retired before him, but he called to them with a voice gentle as the breeze that played in the evening among the spices of Subia. Fly not from your benefactor, children of the dust. I am come to offer you gifts, which only your own folly can make vain. You here pray for water, and water I will bestow. Let me know with how much you will be satisfied. Speak not rashly. Consider that of whatever can be enjoyed by the body, excess is no less dangerous than scarcity. When you remember the pain of thirst, do not forget the danger of suffocation. Now, Hemet, tell me your request. O being kind and beneficent, says Hemet, let thine eye pardon my confusion. I entreat a little brook which in summer shall never be dry, and in winter shall never overflow. The winter never overflow. It is granted, replied the genius, and immediately he opened the ground with his saber, and a fountain bubbled up under their feet, scattering its rills over the meadows. The flowers renewed their fragrance, the trees spread a greener foliage, and the flocks and herds quenched their thirst. Then, turning to Rothschild, the genius invited him likewise to offer his petition. I request, says Rothschild, that thou wilt turn the Ganges through my grounds with all his waters and all their inhabitants. Hemet was struck with the greatness of his neighbor's sentiments, and secretly repined in his heart that he had not made the same petition before him. When the genius spoke, Rash man, be not insatiable. Remember, to thee that is nothing which thou canst not use. And how are thy wants greater than the wants of Hemet? Rothschild repeated his desire, and pleased himself with the mean appearance that Hemet would make in the presence of the proprietor of the Ganges. The genius then retired towards the river, and the two shepherds stood waiting the event. As Rothschild was looking with contempt upon his neighbor, on a sudden was heard the roar of torrents, and they found by the mighty stream that the mounds of the Ganges were broken. The flood rolled towards the lands of Rothschild. His plantations were torn up, his flocks overwhelmed. He was swept away before it, and a crocodile devoured him. Certainly quite cautionary tale, right?